Tracy, author of Torture and Brutality in Medieval Literature. The layman's view of the Middle Ages is a period of frequent violence and unbridled brutality. Is that really the case?
Actually, no, it's not. Not really. Particularly in the case of torture. Essentially, what you have in the Middle Ages is a very distinct interest in making sure that law works correctly. Torture is not introduced into medieval law until the 12th century because it replaces a system of ordeals that was arbitrary at best. But even when torture is introduced, there are people who are vehemently opposed to it. Gratian says torture should not be done under any circumstances to get a confession. And what you find in the Middle Ages, particularly in the 13th and 14th century, is that torture has a very specific role, and it was tightly regulated. There were plenty of abuses, and there were plenty of instances where complaints were lodged against people for enacting torture. But by and large, you see a certain resistance to the use of torture, particularly in countries like England, where it was illegal. I mean, torture is illegal throughout the Middle Ages in England. It does not come into English usage until 1540 under Henry VIII. And it's only legal for 100 years. It goes out in 1640. So what I try to do in terms of literature is look at literary sources that mention specifically judicial torture, which also has a very specific definition in the Middle Ages. Torture is pain that is applied in the interest of getting a confession.
Right.
Now, other kinds of violence that are enacted in a legal setting, I refer to as judicial brutality, because there are plenty of things that modern critics refer to as torture that are not technically torture to a medieval mind or in legal terms. They are brutality, or they are judicial or extrajudicial, meaning that they go outside the boundaries of law, and they are unacceptable punishment. And what you see in a lot of literary texts is a response against it. Is many authors, at least the authors I look at, situate torture as a tool of the barbarian other.
Right.
Not us. We don't torture. Those people torture. And you see this very pronouncedly in English texts from the 13th and 14th century.
Right. Well, that chimes rather with arguments in our own age. In your book, do you contextualise medieval torture at all with modern events?
Absolutely. In fact, in the introduction and the conclusion, I set up the framework about modern concerns regarding torture, particularly in America, and the question of national identity. How do we define ourselves now in the 21st century in terms of torture and torture in foreign policy? And of course, I look at statements from the administration of George W. Bush compared to President Obama, who of course had to stand up in front of the American people his first year in office and say unequivocally, America does not torture. And it was because, of course, over the course of the Bush administration, we had. And so we have exactly the same questions and the same fears and same anxiety about identity that people had in the 13th and 14th century. And in fact, we have an awful lot to learn from the 13th and 14th century about our own questions of identity. And they asked the same questions, and we should have learned from their answers.
Yes, we should. Okay, well, it sounds like there's many good reasons to read your new book, Torture and Brutality in Medieval Literature.
Thank you.
Mrs. Tracy, many thanks.
Thank you.